Voting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they do so.
Good.
Right, it is 1:33, so it looks like we should begin. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's start with introductions. We'll start with the room and then we'll go to Zoom. My name is Maria, Petaluma Transit.
Dana Trey, SCTA RCPA.
Chris Barney, SETA RCPA, and we're transitioning to the Sonoma County Transportation and Climate Authorities. So
Yes,
SETCA. So
I like
Well-
Abdullah. Awesome.
like kind of mid transition point.
Stephen Schmitz, Sonoma County Transit.
Muhammad Ali, MV Transportation, Santa Rosa City.
Angela Conti, local resident.
Kathleen Cortez, County of Sonoma Human Services, Area Agency on Aging.
Colin Toma, Disability Services and Legal Center.
Steph Brett, SCTA RCPA.
Awesome. Let's move to anybody who's online. Is there anybody?
So actually what I'll do is I will read the names to
Perfect.
avoid the awkwardness of popcorn.
Sounds great.
So I'm Drew Nichols with SCTCA, and just for note within that transition, down on the bottom left of the screen, and those on Zoom will see that I have it as SCTCA Transit-Paratransit Coordinating Committee, Sonoma County Climate and Transportation Authorities. So on Zoom, we have Tom Cromer, Kim Petty, and John Gaffney of Golden Gate Transit.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, this time we can move to item number 2, which is public comment. If there's any public comment, probably not. I'm assuming we're all members here, but. All right, seeing none. Let's move to approval of the meeting notes for January 21st. You had an opportunity in your packet to review the notes. This would be the time if there's any additions, changes, or comments.
You have a correction under introductions. Charles Smith, the last name is misspelled. I've always wanted to have a brother. I've had 3 sisters. Yeah.
Oh,
And you think I'm
That
gonna read the
clerk.
minutes, right?
you know, that clerk, no.
Let me give you another one. Mine is 1 and not 2.
Okay.
That's why.
I'm gonna blame Microsoft Word on that one. Please let Charles know I apologize for that.
Oh, no, he's cool. He's cool. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Any other changes or additions? Otherwise, if we can get a move to approve.
Any motion?
Yes, thank you. All right. We need a second, yeah, or no? Yeah. Kathleen, awesome. Second. So we're good. Approved. Do we have to vote? Or anybody opposed?
Any abstentions?
Any abstention. See, I told you I was gonna lean heavy on you today.
I got you, Chair.
All right, seeing none.
Passes.
All right, they're approved. Okay, let's move to election of officers after my beautiful display of how to approve notes. I'm sure you all meeting want to jump in. Did you want to discuss this or do you want me to start off, Steph, talking about it a little bit?
I can very briefly say
Yeah.
that we strongly encourage rotating chair every year before a person, what was their name? Was chair for several years. So in the past, we voted to have a rotating system. So we encourage to rotate.
And it's a fairly easy role. I mean, it's kind of nice because you can bring things specifically to the group if there's something, you want to focus on, but at the same time, it's truly just facilitation of the meeting. And then you have a chair, like I have Mohammed, in the event that you can't make it, your chair can make it. So if there's any nominations, this would be the time. I'm like, would you like to say next?
someone?
I know, I like that. I know, right?
It's a very easy role.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can nominate somebody to move forward if you're interested in it, but of course, we don't want anybody who's not interested in the role. Mohammed, I'm curious, do you want to stay on as vice chair or you?
Fine.
Do you want to go to chair?
No, I'll stay there.
Okay, there we go.
At least I cover one of them, right?
That's very, yes, and I should say Mohammed's done vice chair now. This is the second year of vice chair for this, and this is only my first year. We had Stephen who did last year, so Sonoma County's already rotated through. I have as well. So
It could be Yuri, but Yuri's not here today, so that's.
I know, Yuri.
Yuri has scheduling conflicts as well. I mean, if you two would be interested in rotating and you could be chair and you could be vice chair, that
That's-
way you don't have as much responsibility
Yeah.
second time around, it could be an option.
Yeah.
There is resistance in your face.
I'm happy to continue on as chair. That's fine as well. I'm completely fine to keep it the way it is. If that's the way, I just apologize in advance for the skills. I think it still needs to be a nomination, though, right? Or no?
We will want the.
Yeah.
With the
What do you-
nomination. and a second.
Are there any nominations?
Yeah, well, I think Maria's done a great job, and so I'll nominate Maria to continue as the chair.
I second that.
I thought, no, I'm just kidding. No, no. All right. And then any,
Do we vote on
I
that?
think we could do, if there's a first and a second, I think you just asked if anybody opposes.
anyone opposes?
Abstain.
Anyone abstain? All right,
And then maybe another for the vice chair.
yeah,
So,
all right. I nominate Mohammed to be vice chair. Anyone second it?
I'll second.
Mhm.
Anyone
Okay.
opposed?
Any abstentions?
Abstain.
All right. Then I guess that's it.
One
Thank
more
you.
year.
One more year. One more year. I really want to hit the gavel on that, but I'll wait till the end of that. All right. Thank you for your confidence. I'm glad I'll continue. Please feel free, though. I would say if you have, even if you're not chair, but you have desires for this, please reach out to me. Steph's also great. I mean, you know, if we want to formulate this in a different way this year, different things you want to see, I know we always have that option to bring that up, you know, but if there's something you think of after, no, right? That works. Okay, awesome. All right, then let's move on to item number 5. This is coordinated claim for transit funding. This is a discussion and action item. Who's presenting?
I'll present
All
on
right,
this one.
awesome.
Thank you. So this is an annual item that comes to this committee. The coordinated claim documents the distribution of state and local transit funding to the operators in Sonoma County. And it comes to both our Transit Technical Advisory Committee and this committee every year to ask for a recommendation to our board. And then is presented to our board for approval in April. So this year's coordinated claim already went to the Transit Technical Advisory Committee and was recommended to the board for adoption. This year's coordinated claim is has some changes, some pretty significant changes from last year's. And from last year's kind of had a formula that was ongoing for many years. There's been discussions between all of the transit operators who operate in Sonoma County over the last year on this to reformulate it. Essentially, the previous distribution had a 25% of the Transportation Development Act funds, which is the largest fund source in the coordinated claim, go to Golden Gate Transit at a fixed % every year. And then the other funds were, for the most part, split up by population. The STA had a kind of a piece that went to SMART off the top that was based on kind of their share of the service and ridership in Sonoma County. And how we've changed this is we are using a model that is actually used in Marin County to make that distribution between the operators. And we are using a performance-based percentage to split 3 different fund sources between local transit and regional transit. So that is looking at the share of revenue hours, which is, hours that Transit's operating, and share of ridership annually between Golden Gate, Smart, and the 3 local bus operators to identify the percentage splits for Golden Gate, Smart, and local transit lumped together. And then to divide between local transit, we use a share of the countywide population for the service areas to distribute between the 3 bus operators. The fund sources that are kind of included in the coordinated claim have shifted a bit. We've always had the Transportation Development Act, and we've always had the state transit assistance county block grant program in there. And we've added the low carbon transit operations program, also known as LC Top. It's a much smaller fund source, but it mirrors how they do it in Marin County. So we've added that to the mix of distribution of the funds. This coordinated claim and this formula is proposed for just this 1 year, fiscal year 25-26. And to be reviewed and, over the rest of this year to figure out what a long-term formula will be. It could be this, it could be something else. There's a lot of work going on right now in Marin and Sonoma County with all the transit operators and county transportation authorities to evaluate regional transit on the 101 corridor. And that planning work may inform a change that we want ongoing for the funding formulas. But the transit operators have all agreed to this formula for this upcoming fiscal year 25-26. So that is kind of the structure of it. We do list some additional fund sources that are kind of more informational on the summary page. But it is the TDA, STA, and LC Top that are the SCTA has authority over the distribution of. So with that, I'm just gonna open it up to see if there's any questions.
I just have a quick comment before we go to questions. Who presented on this before? Because I feel like was it James that came in, or who was it that talked about that we were working on those 2 different options? I just want to remind, I thought we had, was that?
It was probably a transit time.
Was it Transit Tac? Okay,
Yeah.
I must be getting confused because I remember him presenting the 2 differences. So, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had some discussions about this at the Transit Tac
Yeah.
meeting. And I think, last year at this meeting, we did
Yeah.
let everyone know that we would be reviewing it in detail and looking at the formula.
I guess the way I'm understanding it is, rather than just being a percentage based in the past, it's being changed to more of a performance based, meaning that those that have the hours and the ridership are going to get the funding that they need. I guess what kind of happens in that situation sometimes is it's sort of taking care of the moment and not really looking to down the road when, like we know that Golden Gate Transit isn't, being used a lot right now. And Smart could be having a lot more ridership as well. But, pulling funds from them, there's always that concern that you're going to sort of, bite into their planning, future planning. So that's the only thing that's sort of coming to mind for me right now.
Yeah, I'll just, comment on that. I appreciate that perspective, and I think that's something that we have grappled with. Because it's looking at past performance rather than future plans, right? However, it's kind of what we have to work with is past performance. We have talked about if there are some major changes recommended for the regional service and plan to go into place, like we may want to have a year or two where there's a transition and we are actually using like projected service hours and ridership. So we haven't come up with that yet, but that's part of the discussion that we'll be having over this next year about how we could kind of future forecast for, during a transition period. But yeah, it's a challenge to kind of figure out what the right thing is.
Yeah, I think I like the idea that it is just a year. I'm not sure when the other guy was here, if we were still talking about a year or not, but I'm always happy to try something new.
And I will say, like, I don't typically work at grants as much, but part of the discussion portion, there's other transit professionals here who can speak more about it. But I will say grappling is probably the best way to say this. Like, this is not, there isn't like, this is it. If this was it, we would be beyond a year. We see issues with this. And I think this is an opportunity, though, these comments you provide help, right? We need to get to a place where this makes sense for all operators. I do think more brains at the table help, more comments, more questions of what are the ways we should be, breaking this up. So I don't want it to feel like, oh, we're just asking you to prove it and move on, but like these comments are helpful. Okay, what should we be considering? What are the factors that we, potentially could look at beyond? Because this is a struggle, this decision of the way they've broken this down.
How are you guys planning to track the outcomes for the next year?
This funding formula is not intended to have major changes to the service that's out there.
Okay.
And so it's in the kind of near term, we're not expecting changes in service. Should there be major plans for that, we will then need to figure out how the formula would adjust accordingly. And it may naturally adjust because of being performance-based. I also do want to note that the largest fund source in here, the Transportation Development Act, is substantially down. Actually, the two largest, the Transportation Development Act and State Transit Assistance funds, are substantially down from last year. So while the local bus operators are getting more under this formula, because Golden Gate's share has gone down, there's no way near as much of a change in their funding as we expected earlier, because those fund sources are down substantially.
Other comments, questions, or anyone want any other?
I was just wondering if there's an error on this. It says page 1 and then under page 1, page 11. The last column, bottom row, it's adding up to 115%. I think it should be adding up to 100%. Looks like when you add 75, 21, and 3. I'm not sure what else it's
Mhm.
counting in there.
I will take a look as we speak. Thank you.
Always been curious, a bit confused by what the STA County Block Grant funds are.
Yeah, so that's the population-based portion of the
Oh,
STA
of
funds.
STA. Okay.
Yeah.
Why are they called block grant? When
So-
did they changed the terminology?
Yeah, they changed it about 6, 7 years ago. Yeah, the way that MTC wanted to do the STA population-based funds, they used to distribute it directly
Oh, to
to
the,
the operators, and then
Okay.
they shifted that over to the county transportation authorities.
that's when it handles.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it became a block grant.
All right, thank you.
Block grant, it's not federal funding, is it?
It is state.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? So, okay, so you need us to approve this.
Yes.
Move to approve if I have somebody who wants to, right?
And I actually
Oh, you want?
need to clarify that since transit operators receive this funding, they cannot vote. So we can only take a vote.
Why is that?
It is a
I can see that.
TPCC rule.
Oh, it's a
Um,
kind of new rule?
no, it's actually always been like that. So our transit operators do
Like it.
vote on this
We can block it.
through
the T-TAC.
the
I'll sit
transit
under the
tax.
double vote, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
But through the Transit-Paratransit Coordinating
Yeah.
Committee, it's only non-operators are.
That
Lots of
makes
that.
sense, yeah.
And how many of those are in the room?
They're all transit.
Yeah.
And
So-
those Muhammad counts too. right?
Mohammed counts too. Yeah, so it would really be the
The three of you.
So the council would be 2 votes?
Yes.
Yes. So, do we just go right to a vote or we have to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then a vote. Okay, awesome. So we need a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Right. And then all in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Don't get to-
Anybody opposed?
Any abstentions?
Stephen, you're making a face, dude.
Well, I don't think anybody could be
I
abstaining
know.
because somebody made the motion, somebody seconded and everybody approved. Anyways.
I guess.
Should one have a state?
Yeah, exactly.
Because there wouldn't be. Just put it in that column, territory.
Right.
The abstention is kind of null, but it doesn't affect.
You still have to ask the question.
Yeah, no, they,
Yeah.
I mean, they need to be asked that question too.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, so this is approved.
Well,
Sounds
thank you.
good. All right, thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so that is done. Now we are moving on to item number 6. This is the comprehensive transportation plan draft project list. This is a discussion item and I'm guessing, oh,
Yeah.
all right.
Thank you, Madam Chair, happy to present on our comprehensive transportation plan today. So let me go ahead and share some slides.
Oh, yes, sorry, Chris.
Showing up. All right, so I'm here today to talk a little bit about our comprehensive transportation plan. I believe earlier this year or late last year, I gave a presentation on what the CTP is. But just to provide a really brief recap of what our CTP is, it's a guiding document that we prepare every 4 or 5 years for SETA that includes goals and objectives. But also a pretty big component of it is a vision or financially unconstrained list of transportation projects and programs that our local jurisdictions and agencies would like to work on over the next 25 to 30 years. So I'll be talking about that financially unconstrained list today, what has been submitted and some summaries on what types of projects have been submitted and, what the next steps are. So there are a number of reasons we track projects in the CTP. One is just to identify priorities and different project types and programs that our local partners would like to work on. New bus service improvements or facilities, roadway improvements, active transportation improvements, and different programs. So we work very closely with the local cities and town and transit providers to identify needs and priorities for the future. So one part of the CTP as well is taking a look at where we see things going in the future. So looking at population growth, housing and employment growth, and these proposed transportation projects, and seeing how transportation trends or flows or behavior could change in the future. So, what are travel times? What are our greenhouse gas emissions and vehicle miles traveled? Where the main origins and destinations in the county are, where congested locations are, things like that. So we use a lot of our analysis tools to evaluate these projects, but also future growth patterns. Another requirement from our CTP is to feed projects into the regional transportation plan and other regional planning documents. And in order to access MTC funding sources and other state and federal funding sources, larger projects need to be listed out in the regional transportation plan. So the CTP is kind of a starting point for those projects. We include them in our financially unconstrained list. Once they're in our plan, they can be advanced to the regional transportation plan, which is known as Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus now. So you may have heard a little bit about that. So moving on to SETA funding. So as part of our own funding and programming and project management practices, we're required to have an updated policy and planning document to help guide how we allocate our funding at the SETA RCPA level. And then we're going to be talking about this a little bit later this year. But one big piece of the CTP is to help identify potential projects for our funding programs. So our projects and programming team is going to be issuing a call for projects this summer that's going to be looking at all sorts of funding sources that SETA administers and doing some prioritization for where that funding should go. So the CTP is kind of a good starting point for that process. So this is what we've done. So last fall, we worked with local project sponsors, which include local agencies and governments, transit providers, to update projects that were in the past CTP. So we updated project costs and project descriptions, removed projects that had been completed or projects that aren't priorities anymore. So looking since the last CTP, we saw 15 large projects completed over the last 4 or 5 years. And one thing I do want to mention is that in the CTP, generally they're larger projects having a project cost of around $1 million or more. So there are a lot of other smaller projects that are being completed in that time frame as well. And we have categories in the CTP that cover things like bicycle and pedestrian improvements under 1 million, or bus improvements under that same category. So there's more happening than just those 15 projects. Those are 15 large projects that have been completed in that time frame. Over 200 projects we carried over from the last CTP, so we worked to update that information, and we received over 100 new project submissions. So quite a few new project ideas on the list. So that brings us up to 315 total projects in the draft CTP list, with an estimated project cost of just over $17 billion. So large price tag, but keep in mind, this is looking out to 2050 and beyond. And about $5 billion of that project cost has already been identified. A big chunk of that is transit operations. So a lot of that's already identified and covered. So the five largest projects on the list, which is, I think, about 14 pages in the agenda packet of really small font. So I'll go through some of the high points on that, in case you don't want to get out your super high powered glasses and look through the list. But the five largest are two State Route 37 improvement projects, both the long-term sea level rise adaptation project and the interim project that's looking at addressing shorter term flooding issues in the Highway 37 corridor. We have smart ongoing operations that's over 2 billion for that 25-year period. Pavement maintenance requirements countywide for Sonoma County. This is the unincorporated areas. And Sonoma County has the highest number of lane miles in the Bay Area, and I think it's one of the highest in the state as well. So a lot of needs to keep the pavement up in the county. And then the Smart West East Rail capital enhancements is included in there as well. And that would be to provide service between Novato and Suisun City and Solano County. So moving to bicycle and pedestrian projects, just a few little bits of information before we move to some of the big bicycle and pedestrian projects. About 8% of all trips or travel in Sonoma County is made by walking or biking. Currently, that's our current estimate. About 3% of those are commute trips. So relatively small proportion of getting around is done by walking or biking. Higher proportion is, for all, recreation and social and shopping trips are made using those travel modes. So, but back in 2019, we actually conducted a travel behavior study and looked at, more information on the types of trips people are making in Sonoma County. And we found that 60% of trips or travel are 5 miles or less, and 30% are less than 2 miles. So, which is roughly a 12-minute bike ride. So even though a pretty small proportion of overall travels made walking and biking, there are some opportunities there, right? Those under 5 mile trips and under 2 miles, there are opportunities to shift those away from automobiles to walking, biking, or transit. So the current ATP estimates that there are over 400 existing miles of bicycle pedestrian facilities. That includes multi-use pathways and bike lanes. About 122 miles of those are multi-use pathways or facilities separated from the roadway. So, which are really helpful to avoid those conflicts with vehicle travel. And then based on the updated active transportation plan, approximately 1,100 miles are planned for new bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So a lot of things that we would like to do. We just need to get those funded and implemented over time. So here are the largest 5 bicycle and pedestrian projects, along with the estimate and cost for all bike ped projects. So we have 103 of those with $1.2 billion cost, if those were all to be implemented. And then looking at the smaller projects that aren't listed out specifically in the plan, these are those projects that are under $1 million. That's $486 million. So a lot of smaller projects that are included in local active transportation plans that aren't listed out line by line in the CTP. So, but moving on to the largest 5 projects, we have active transportation improvements around smart stations. So this is looking at first and last mile connections to the rail. Regional parks, Sonoma County Regional Parks has proposed a California Coast Trail connection from Mendocino County down to Marin County. So multi-use pathway, making that connection. Completion of the smart pathway is $59 million. And then there are 2 Highway 101 crossings, one in Rohnert Park at Copeland Creek and one in Santa Rosa, connecting Santa Rosa Junior College with the west side of Highway 101. So moving on to roads and highways, we have over 2,600 lane miles of public roadways countywide. So as I said, highest in the Bay Area, one of the highest in the state. Over $2 billion in the project list is dedicated to local road maintenance and rehab. So keeping those roads up, so buses and cars and bikes and pedestrians can use those facilities. So they degrade over time. So there's a pretty significant cost in keeping those up. And then in 2023, we saw over 11 million daily vehicle miles traveled per day in Sonoma County. So we have a lot of roads, but they're being used a lot as well. One thing that we did see as part of our travel behavior study is that even though there's a lot of travel happening in Sonoma County, around 90% of trips starting in the county stay here. So not a lot of, there's about 10% of trips going outside and coming in. So looking at the largest 5 road and highway projects, the 2 Highway 37 projects are on there, as we saw on the, the high level list. Countywide road maintenance, again, about 2 billion. But the 2 other ones that didn't show up on the overall list, but that are on this list are the Caulfield Lane Bridge and Extension Project down in Petaluma, and interchange improvements at Mark West Springs Road and River Road interchange along Highway 101. So that's near the Sutter Hospital area. So here's a look at different categories in the road and highway category of the CTP. So you can see highway improvements. This includes freeways and highways and interchanges. The bulk of that 4.9 billion is the Highway 37 project, about 4.6. So the remainder is really focused on interchange improvements. We don't have a lot of capacity increasing projects in the plan, looking at road, new lanes on our freeways and highways and streets. So it's mostly looking at maintenance and improving operations in what we have. So we have a few categories focused on intersection improvements, which are largely operations and safety, intelligent transportation systems and new technologies. So again, really focused on improving the operations of our roads and what we have. We have a multimodal streetscape improvement category that looks at the whole street, which includes bicycle pedestrian improvements, sidewalk improvements, safety. So it's looking from sidewalk throughout the whole the road section, and that includes a fair number of road diet or lane reduction projects in Sonoma County. And then you can see roadway improvements, which is primarily maintenance, up around 3 billion. In the county. So about 8.6 billion of the 17 billion is focused on road and highways, with about 4.6 in that Highway 37 corridor. So looking at key transit projects, there's a very large focus on maintaining existing operations. So that would make up the lion's share of costs in the CTP for transit projects. There are service increases proposed for all transit systems in the CTP. Most of those are not currently funded, so they are vision projects, things we would like to see. The plan also includes smart rail service extensions to Cloverdale, including new vehicles and maintenance facilities, and adding smart stations in Windsor, Healdsburg, Geyserville, and Cloverdale. So Windsor is set to open this year. Healdsburg is, I believe, mostly funded. Geyserville is new for this CTP. And then Cloverdale was recently added to the regional transportation plan as well. So that's advancing. So happy to see that making some progress. So the completion of the smart pathway is included here as well. That's also a bicycle and pedestrian project, but there's some overlap with transit as well, since SMART is leading up that effort. The plan includes a number of rapid bus corridors in the county, one focused in Petaluma and one in Santa Rosa, really looking at the Santa Rosa Avenue and Mendocino corridor, providing transit priority and making it easier for buses to navigate that area, and also the Sebastopol Road and Sonoma Avenue area. So making it easier and faster for buses to navigate those corridors. A number of technology improvements included in the plan, including things like passenger information and fare technologies, transit signal improvements, and other operational improvements. The plan covers maintenance shops, bus yards, and bus stop improvements, and electrification of buses and charging facilities, and then implementation of mascots and transit integration recommendations is also represented in the plan. So here's a breakdown by different project types. So you can see the transit improvements and operations is by far the biggest chunk here. Keeping the buses in existing service running is very important, and also the most costly portion of that. Transit capital projects involves bus purchases and vehicle purchases, laying track for SMART, things like that. And then, a fair amount of resources and projects focused on, intelligent transportation systems and new technologies to improve transit service countywide. So we've also included travel demand management programs. So there are some, examples of what this could include up on the board here, things like the Safe Routes to School and other education and encouragement programs, subsidies and incentives, and encouragement programs like the Emergency Ride Home program are included in that. This is a little bit of a catch-all right now. We're really waiting to see the results of the travel demand management plan that's being worked on right now to inform what this could be going forward. And then here's a breakdown by existing projects that have carried over. You can see about $14 billion. That covers about 14 billion of the existing projects in the CTP, and then the new projects, with the cost breakdown by project type is there. So this chart's also included in the agenda packet if you'd like to refer back to it, but it's just kind of a summary by project type. We're working with local project sponsors, which includes public works and engineering staff, planning staff, and transit providers to review the list right now. So we've already gotten a few comments back to correct errors and omissions. But, keep in mind again that these are bigger projects, so $1 million or more. So there's a list of key information we're looking to review and check here, project type and location, year of implementation and cost, and if any funding has been identified. And we're looking to wrap that up by the end of April. So here's a look at the schedule and next steps. We worked with local agencies to update existing project information last fall. We issued a call for new projects last winter. Those were received in December, so we were able to process all those applications and get the draft out now. So local agencies are reviewing that right now for accuracy. Once we finalize the draft list, we'll embark on our CTP performance assessment. That's where we look at future conditions, use our analysis tools, and look at performance metrics, right? Like how we believe things will be going in the future. So we'll report out on that this summer. Also this summer, our colleagues on the funding side of the house here at SETA will be issuing a call for projects as part of SETA funding program cycle 2. So that'll be really looking at funding programs administered by SETA, including Go Sonoma and other funding programs. So there'll be more information about that coming out soon. So building on that process, one of the things that will be involved in that call for projects is prioritizing projects for the next 5 or 10 years based on what funding is available. So we'll use that information that's compiled as part of that funding program call to develop a short-term implementation plan for the SETA. So the CTP generally looks out to that like 25, 30-year time horizon. So we want to really focus on, what can we do in the near term? So we'll look at those projects that could receive near-term funding, but also look at, policies or ways we could advocate to see short-term change as part of that. And then we're looking at wrapping this all up and updating the information in the plan by the end of this year. So that's where we're at. So, and there is that 14-page list in the agenda packet. So if you have any questions or would like a filtered down list in other formats, let me know. We can definitely provide that. But happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Chris. Wow, it's neat to look at all the things, right? Like, In the billions of dollars, no.
On the wish list.
Exactly.
Right?
One thing I didn't see in there, or of course I didn't look at all of it really closely, but services for seniors. I know we've had a lot of comments about Dial a Ride. We have Lumago, which I hope you can give us a report on how that's going. But we hear all the time that there's nothing in Sonoma County for senior transportation. So I just curious why. I know a lot of counties do have something similar. But when you look at our demographics, I mean, it's nice that we have a lot of bike riders, but overall, when you look at the comparison of the money that goes into bikes and bike lanes and bike projects and electric bikes, compared to service enhancements for our populations that really need transportation because they don't drive or can't drive, and they can't ride a bike. I just wonder, how does a project like that get on the list if only transportation agencies can submit projects?
We do have a few categories that fits really well under. So, I think what we can do is under the description of that, really just list out, shuttle service for seniors. So it's covered in that category. But I agree, we've heard a lot about that as part of our outreach for the CTP and other projects as well. So yeah, I think it would be important that, it does show up somewhere on there. So I'll make sure to go back on the list and make sure it's listed out.
Great. And then I didn't know can't remember what the mascots stand for, but I know it has something to do with transit integration. And I remember long ago when that report came out, one of the recommendations was to integrate the paratransit so that there was one paratransit because it's such a very costly program to run. And is there any movement or work being done to consolidate the paratransit services?
So, yeah, that was in the transit integration and efficiency study as a recommendation. There's a number of efforts that have been ongoing since that study on various different aspects of integrating transit. There's been some baby steps taken on paratransit, like a consistent application form, some things like that are, have been put in place. But in terms of full consolidation of paratransit, we haven't jumped into that yet. I think it's a pretty big lift. And there's been a lot of other kind of lower hanging fruit that we've been working on tackling, as well as some really big things that are being studied at the same time. So.
And I think it's a very strong point to bring up. It was a question I had as well when looking at things. And I think when you look in the list there, kind of to Chris's point is that in there, it's just maybe pointing them out. There's a section for, a mobility manager, and there's a section for countywide microtransit. I'm not trying to pop things up on you guys' list, but if we want to, if there's attention that needs to be paid, those would be the areas that would allow for that kind of work. And I would say with the consolidation efforts, it's so much better than it was. And I know it might be hard to see, but I feel like it's getting better. I think the bigger things can be done. And so I don't want to just make a statement like that, but I will say in Sonoma County, there's a great opportunity for this consolidation. And I think we do really well to speak to each other. And that has been much better, where I think we have more relationships in terms of our dispatch team, and there isn't as much of a person getting pushed from one place to another. But with that work being done, and with 90% of our trips, same with para, right? These folks stay within the county. I think it's an opportunity, especially with the mobility manager role. I know Area on Aging hasn't won, and that's something I think we should be discussing at a later, like what is it that this will do as opposed to what Area on Aging, and what is it that needs to be done? And we don't need to take all the time on this. I know this is a much larger thing, but I will focus on that component where I think there might be an opportunity to add more beef to that, especially with MTC wanting to see something like that in play.
And I've written down those two project areas that, senior service could or older adult service could be included under, and I'll make a note that we specifically list that out
Thank you.
as an option. Really appreciate that. And then mascots is Marin and Sonoma.
Service operation.
Put
Oh my gosh,
John
I'm gonna get
Gaffney
it
on
wrong
this.
every
Gaffney,
time.
put it in the chat. What is it?
I'm
honestly not sure what it stands for. David goes to most of those meetings.
Think of what
It's
is
Marin, Sonoma
area,
County,
Sonoma
something.
County. Yeah.
Transportation,
Operation.
I'm sure there's a coordinated word in there somewhere.
Yes.
Station suppliers. There we go.
We're gonna make it up. Other questions or comments or things you're not seeing here that we can ask the staff about or that you want to see in here? Because again, it's, we're not into, I don't think anyone anticipates everybody doing a deep dive, but this is an opportunity. It's like the study group session on this, right? We can ask the questions. We have the source here. So I think it's an opportunity for sure.
And, if we don't, if I don't know, or Dana or one of the SCTA or CPA staff doesn't know the details on the project, we can definitely get that information from the sponsor. So, yeah, and a lot of these projects, they're more nebulous and ideas going forward, right? So there's room to expand the the descriptions and include different ideas in there as well. So.
And it's due at the end of the year.
So comments on the draft project list are due by the end of April, but we're working on finishing the entire plan by the end of the year. Yeah. So we're making some progress. We still have a lot of writing and everything to do, but we've been out in the community for the last close to a year doing outreach and collecting information from the community on projects and priorities. We've held a lot of meetings already and workshops. The project list is a big chunk of work to update, so we're doing that. We'll be doing the performance assessment. That's another big push. And then this summer and fall, we'll be doing writing and updating the actual document. And hopefully by the end of summer, early fall, we'll be able to bring a draft document to this committee for you to take a look at, and then we're shooting for the end of the year for the final draft.
A lot of work. And in terms of comments, you said April 4th, I believe is what it was. Or-
April 30th
30th,
for,
okay.
yeah, comments on the draft project list.
And how would you like those? Would you email?
Yeah, email's great.
Okay.
We've provided spreadsheet versions of the project list to each project sponsor, so I can send those out to anyone else that wants those as well. But yeah, email comments or marking up the spreadsheets, whatever is most convenient. And I was trying to look up mascots as well.
I think it's.
I don't think it's spelled out.
Yeah, I
online
don't think
anywhere.
it's spelled out.
No, it's not online.
Yeah.
We don't have anything out yet. I could.
I have
Post
it in
update
on a slide.
Yeah.
somewhere.
Okay.
Because it's still fairly new. Yeah, any other questions for this? I'm gonna say I encourage you all to take a deeper look, right? So now we know what it is. You kind of can see how it starts off very broad, but how can we like put some fine tuning in there and send it their way? But appreciative of, to Kathleen's point, the amazing amount of work this has to have taken and the outreach that you've already done. So I know we appreciate all the work so that we can get the cleanest version, or we just get to add our little 2 cents. So it's awesome.
Appreciate your feedback and
All right. Well, if there are no other comments, great job on that. Thank you so much. We're going to move to, this is the Transportation Network stuff. You're gonna
Yeah.
present on this, am I correct?
So we discussed this in our last meeting, and I'm looping back in with more information that I've gathered on this. This is the Transportation Network Company Access for All Funding, or TNC WAVE. Just a quick recap, every time there is a ride share ride in the county, 10 cents goes towards a bucket of money that is intended for accessibility, transportation, wheelchair accessible vehicles. That's what WAVE stands for. And the reason I'm bringing this to you is that for this funding year, the deadline to apply to be a local access fund administrator is April 1st. That's coming up very quickly. We did reach out to Petaluma Transit to see if they're interested. But based on some of the administrative aspects of it and a lot of details about it, it's a challenging program to administer. And after reaching out to the California Public Utilities Commission, or CPUC, I found out that there is now a statewide level administrator called GCAP. GCAP is a consultant firm that assists government agencies, and they're going to administer the funds for the entire state. The very cool thing about them is that they're going to take the 343,000 that were already hanging out in the bucket that hadn't been claimed, and they are going to start administering it. Those funds do stay within Sonoma County, which is very exciting. And they are able to work with local disability communities and transportation planning agencies within the county to contract with access providers to make sure that the money is spent in ways that are good for the county and that we're in contact with them. So I definitely want to encourage you to reach out to GCAP and make sure that that funding is going towards the programs that are existing. And it's nice that they're administering it, because it would have been a very challenging and big lift administrative effort to manage such a small bucket of money. Also, the funds that they are already working with, it's already allocated for them, are for all of 2019 and 2023. But the funds that you could apply for April 1st are for 2024-2025 funding year. And the amount is 100 something, 100 and, it's in the article. It's 145,000 for this cycle. So if you want to be a administrator or LAFA, you would have to apply by April, I already forgot, April 1st. So yeah, otherwise it would go to GCAP and they will administer it for us. So yeah, that's the brief summary on that. But if you have questions about this program, please let me know.
My understanding is that the only allowable access fund administrator has to be a transit agency. Only transit agencies can administer the funding. That's what
You can see either a transit
broader.
agency or a
CTSA.
CTSA. It could be a organization like a metropolitan planning organization or a county transportation authority as well. So yeah, there's some different options there.
So per the staff report, it's an MPO, RTPA, CTC, or transit agency can administer that money.
So any of you guys.
Well, what would be the benefit of our doing it rather than letting them do it?
I think it makes sense to let them do it and contract with them. It seems like a lot less work. But if you feel very passionate about administering that money, you have the option.
We had talked about this at this committee earlier, and kind of given the amount of funding, it seemed like it would be easier to use it if it were going like just directly through a transit agency for some sort of program that is to help support a program that has other funding as well, or is kind of expand an existing program, because it's not really enough to do an entirely new program. So I think there didn't seem to be that existing kind of opportunity through one of the programs the transit operators is running at this time. So I mean, it seems to me like having the statewide administrator kind of makes more sense and is probably more efficient than.
Do we lose any control over its distribution?
The money stays in the county.
It stays in the county.
Yeah. Regarding control, I think that's a complicated.
They'll
question.
be looking for service providers
Mhm.
to do programs and yeah, implement the services. So I think if there were a strong vision for something in Sonoma County and enough funding to get us there, you know, we could see it as losing control, but you know, through the conversations we've had, we haven't really seen that.
I think the problem is we just don't have any. We don't have any wheelchair accessible transportation services that are affordable. I mean, we have paratransit, which is not fully funded through any of the three agencies. So it's always losing money. And then there's Wheelcare Express, which is very expensive. And most of the people who need it can't afford it. So I just wonder, how are they going to get affordable wheelchair accessible vehicles in this county when they don't exist? And I see it as an outside agency. We would have less control, and then there would be double dipping for the overhead, because they'll be taking a chunk, they'll be contracting out a chunk or many chunks. And so the actual service is diminished. So it'll be interesting to see how it rolls out. Hopefully it'll be better than I'm picturing. But that's kind of how I'm seeing it.
And I do appreciate those insights. That's a good way to give us some perspective. And I think we should really encourage existing services to contract with them.
Mhm.
I think you may have said it, so I apologize, but it's an annual funding, right? This will come up every year, but
Yes.
we don't have a projection for what it will be, right? Like it's a variable funding that can change each year. Okay.
It's 10 cents per rideshare
But we
ride,
don't know.
and it's not huge in Sonoma
Right.
County.
And I think that ended December 24. They have been collecting 10 cents on every TNC ride for several years, but I think that the legislation, there was a sunset, and they only collected funding up until 2024. I
not
think,
aware of
I'm
that.
not for sure, but I think that's what I read a long time ago. So I don't know how, it would self-fund, or if there's interest funds, or the state is funding or supplementing, but something into.
This is Kim Petty. I'm pretty sure that it is still being funded.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah, that is good to know. I did chat with a CPUC representative, and they were expecting it next year to be available again if we're not ready to apply by April 1st.
And we can do
Yeah, I mean, as a TNC operator, I know we're still paying it.
it.
Wonderful. Yeah, but we'll keep an eye out to see if it's sunset for sure.
I haven't heard anything else.
Yeah, same.
That's all for me.
All right. Then moving on to, this is the Strategic Transportation Demand Management Plan Survey. And we have a flyer attached, but I wasn't sure who's going to tell us about it.
I don't know either. We could discuss it. Would you like to? Sure.
That's very nice. Do you want the flyer?
I mean, I think I do need to look at it.
Yeah. It looks really cool.
It is a great flyer. So, Dana and I are working with a consultant named Steer to do a transportation demand management plan. So this is a strategic plan that will identify solutions to support non-driving trips. The main goal is to identify good places to do some first and last mile solutions and improve connectivity. And the aim is to reduce greenhouse gases and reduce congestion and just make the county a little more accessible. So as we're doing this, we also want input from the community. So the survey is currently live, and I strongly encourage you to fill it out and provide your insights that will be integrated into this TDM plan. The deadline is the end of this month, so it's a pretty short window until March. I believe it's the 31st This March have 31 days.
Yeah, I think it's actually the 27th of March. But yeah, if you have a channel to share it out, we would, love to have it shared out in more places. And it's a very short survey, so we are using a lot of information from other planning efforts, kind of recent public input and that made us able to make the survey very quick to fill out.
Yeah, definitely less than 5 minutes. You can scan the QR code, and I do want to say, I think it's past the 29th because that's when the Cotati Fair is. So, deadline March 29th.
Okay. Any questions on that? Great, we'll share it out on our channels. All right, this moves us to roundtable updates, and we'll start with transit and paratransit operators. And then we will move to mobility partner reports. Let's start with Zoom folks, the people, if you want to go there, I'm changing it up for transit. Yep, let's start with John, if it's okay, John.
Yeah, sure. I don't really have a whole lot to mention on behalf of the district. We're about where we were last time.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
And who else is on, Drew, that for transit? No one else, right? The rest are mobility partners. Okay, awesome. Great, thank you. Stephen, do you want to?
Yeah, hi, Stephen from Sonoma County Transit, and we're just continuing to work on our bus yard charger project, electric bus charger project, and we hope to have that wrapped up late spring, early summer. And we should be receiving, in the meantime, I think 3 new buses from BYD, 30-foot buses, electric buses later this spring. And then by the end of the calendar year, December, we'll start with our first electric 40-foot buses. And the following year, by the end of 26, did I get the year right? Yeah. By the end of 26, we'll have some buses from Gillig. So the first 40-foot buses will be from Phoenix. Then the second set will be from Gillig. So we're getting excited about probably up to about 15 electric buses within the next couple of years, and working on our bus yard to accommodate those and charge those.
And what happens to the old buses?
They sit in our yard for a little bit, and then we usually sell them to a company that will dismantle them and either recycle or reuse bus parts. I'm sorry, I have to leave a little bit early. I've got another meeting to go to at 3. Good to see y'all.
Good to see
Thank
you
you.
as well. Mohammed, do you want to update for city bus?
Thank you. Transportation on the transit. Yuri excused himself. He has something to do today. Actually, he's been out for the whole week. He didn't have that much update, but he was still working on his EV buses. The one that they already in service, and then he's gonna add another couple of them. He's running through them. They still have some issues with the charger like everybody else, but yeah, they're solving it between BG&E and whatever company they doing. It's like, I think it's an app, I guess. So from the paratransit side, yes, so the paratransit, we get some more rides right now. For some reason, I don't know what's changed. We have a little uptake, so yeah, we're reaching about 2,500 hours. So there's a little bit of quiet, a bit, but we almost like 90% before COVID right now. From the eligibility side, also there is some like uptake from January, a little bit less in February, but uptick again in March. So people get aware for paratransit for some reason, and they want to join, which is a good thing. But the thing is, we have like what they call it, a cap from whatever we have. So whatever buses we have, we don't have more. It's just a replacement, just to refresh the service. We get a bus, a brand new bus for open service, the community. It's between us and the transit, but they call it deviated route. So it's a brand new bus and they're very happy about it. It started last month, so it's running good. We got 3 paratransit replacement and we're working right now on 4. So probably by June, we're gonna start like a real the replacement process. By the end of the year, then we're gonna get it. So it's good. All right.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Any questions?
And I will go for what's on my shirt, Petaluma Transit. Just a few quick announcements. Well, the first, which I think is very important, is today is National Transit Employee Appreciation Day.
Yes.
So please thank a transit operator, a driver, a dispatcher today. At Petaluma, we're gifting all of our drivers. They got treats all day and there's things in there, but I brought one of them because I thought it was so cute. Our little donuts, yes, and they get a little raffle prize. But drivers, you know, and dispatch staff go through a lot, right? A very, very, very tricky role. So I encourage you. We also at Petaluma are doing where we've actually asked the public to submit comments. So if anybody here is interested in submitting a comment, we're posting them. And so we do a little slideshow so that they know all the wonderful things that folks have said. So yes, and it's every year. And just so you know, the date is based on, in France, it was the first public transit. That was very interesting. And that was the date that it started. So long.
March 18th.
Yeah, there was, at some point, I think there was a discussion around making it a certain day of the week because it would fall on a Saturday. So it's usually around March 18th right there, but I think that's the actual day. Yeah, so exciting for sure. I also brought a flyer in and I'll put some, it's from Age Friendly. They are doing a how to be your own geriatric workshop. There are very few geriatrics in Sonoma County, let alone in the state. So it's an opportunity to ask questions and that will be on April 26th. So I will have that out there if anybody's interested. And I know a digital copy will be provided as well. The other thing is Petaluma Transit, because we are also facing a bus shortage right now, some aging out buses. We've just got 4 used AC Transit vehicles that we'll be putting on the streets in the next month or so. So you might see something a little different, but right now we're using paratransit vehicles to operate our fixed route. We need to get out of that. So this will allow us to get out of that. We're also going to be getting 4 electric buses in the summer, working on a new website, working on a new bus schedule. So lots of fun things there. We are also currently in the process of being out to bid for our operations contract. And so we just had our site walk and we should be making a decision, I think in June, but it'll be effective July. So very exciting stuff. There was a request about LumaGo, so I was trying to pull up some of that information. LumaGo is doing amazing. We just hit another ride record of 124 rides. It's our highest yet in February. In February, we completed over 2,400 rides. We're averaging 4.5 passengers per hour, which is not good for fixed route, but it's very good for an on-demand service. But that kind of shows you the limitations of an on-demand service. We currently have a met demand rate of 89%. And what that means is thinking about all the vehicles that are out if you're going to get a ride. So just a few updates on that. Happy always to answer more questions though. We have butter and eggs coming for Petaluma Future Fest, which will be very cool. Put on by Cool Petaluma. And then the fair this year is going to actually be held, the city is taking ownership of the fair. And so they'll be putting that on as well. So very busy. All right. So let's move to not non-transit, but our partners, mobility partner reports. And we have, I believe Kim is on. So we'll start with you, Kim.
Hi, no major updates on our end for Sonoma County. Got some new programs going on across the country, but not here in Sonoma.
Thanks, Kim. And Tom, where's anybody else on there? No, okay. And go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, calling Display Service and Link Center. We're going to be having our annual Asian Display Resource Expo on May 23rd at the backdrop at Becoming Independent. So looking for vendors to come. All transit agencies are invited to be a vendor and a sponsor. I know see some of the transit side last year, so they probably got an invitation already, but any providers want to attend, they can reach out to us and we can send in the information to get registered and look forward to seeing that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Kathleen?
So, yeah, the Area Agency on Aging tomorrow, we have our public hearing for our area plan. So, every 4 years we do an area plan. It's based on the findings from our needs assessment where we select the priorities that the community is asking for to fund with the Older American Act funds. And so part of the requirement is that we report out on what we've done with the funding, how we've achieved our goals, and then what we plan to do for the 25-26 fiscal year. So that's tomorrow at 1. It's online and in person at our office on Westwind Boulevard. And then we're getting ready to receive our Section 5310 grants from the FTA, which are administered by Caltrans. These are going to be going to the Board of Supervisors to approve the funding in a couple weeks. So once that's all set, we'll be bringing in funding to do 2 projects, a mobility management project, which you alluded to earlier, and that would fund a social worker bilingual to focus on some of the transportation calls and doing some warm handoffs and helping with paratransit applications, getting transit information for older adults and people with disabilities. Last year, 24, we handled 6,500 phone calls just for senior services or older adult services. That's not all transportation related. It's related to Meals on Wheels, like all the different programs we have. But this year, just at Q2, we're at 4,000 calls. So we're getting a lot of calls and a lot of them are transportation related. So it's a way for us to get more information about what the needs are and can hopefully bring that information to this group to help with some of the planning and figuring out where the gaps are and demographic gaps and the access gaps. So that's the mobility management project. And then the other grant that we have is for transportation vouchers, which most of the funding will go to our safety net program. So that's APS, Adult Protective Services, IHSS, in-home supportive services. So for our Medi-Cal recipients and people that need transportation access to get to medical appointments and certain therapies, that funding will be available for people to use for transportation services. So it can be TNC services, taxis, wheelchair express. It's just has to be non-public transit is the way the 5310 funds work. And that's it.
Thank you. Yeah. Any other updates?
I have mascots.
Yeah.
Is Marin Sonoma Coordinated Transit Service Analysis.
Okay,
So-
great.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I always get stuck at the O because there's not actually an O in there, so
It's coordinated
Yeah.
CEO
CO
Oh, it's,
coordinated. Yeah.
throws me off too.
no
A at the end, analysis?
mascots that? That sounds very different.
Or something.
Sounds like a good project, though.
Yes. All right. If any future agenda topics, I will put in my 2 cents of, I think, moving the mobility, because where you are with the mobility manager role, I know that the transit agencies have been discussing the mobility manager role and what that even looks like. So it might be worthwhile to bring it to this space, just to kind of say like, what is it? So we're not overlapping, because I know as the transit agencies are kind of trying to tackle this, we're wondering where the gaps are that they can fill up without, with complementing the other services. But if there are other things anybody wants to bring up for future topics, this be the time.
Can't think right now.
That's okay. You can continue to think when you leave this room and let us know, because there's no end date on letting us know future topics. So that's perfect.
Let us know.
Exactly. All right. If there's no other business. All right, then I think this meeting is adjourned. Literally, I'm in it for this. That's it.
Best part.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome.
You're meant to be a judge.
My brain says I'm meant to be in charge of